Bum, 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 bum. Hey, everybody, come on in here. I know it's a holiday, but you got up so that you could, so that you could, could join me for the simultaneous sip. So happy President Trump Day. Um, I thought it was the 4th of July. It was on my calendar as the 4th of July. Historically, it had always been the 4th of July. But for the past few weeks, all I've been seeing is reports from anti-Trumpers that today is really a celebration of President Trump. Apparently, there's going to be a big military parade and biggest fireworks of all time. And I think that's pretty exciting. So happy President Trump Day. I don't think the president planned it to be a celebration of him, but his critics have made it so. I know you're watching Boo in the background here. She's going to be watching the show apparently. So let's talk about all of the interesting things happening today. I think we might reach peak TDS today, Trump Derangement Syndrome. Here are some things happening in the news. So in no particular order, these are things happening lately. The company that provided the fireworks for today's celebration in Washington, D.C. is receiving death threats. Death threats for providing fireworks on the 4th of July. The very hilarious kid and her family who were making the parodies of AOC. She was a little kid who looked like AOC and would do all the same things AOC did. They removed their account on YouTube because of death threats. All right. So the fireworks company got death threats. The miniAOC parody got death threats. And then there was the cartoonist who did the anti-Trump comic, and he got fired for that because of the nature of the comic. But his replacement, somebody was offered the job, and the guy who was offered the job said, no thanks, too hot, no thanks. Then, of course, there was the Antifa beating of anti-no. That happened recently. So TDS is cranking up, but here's my all-time best example. Charles Blow, I'm not making this name up. His last name is Blow, B-L-O-W. Anyway, Charles Blow's job is at the New York Times. I'm just telling you the news. Charles Blow, his job is at the New York Times, where he's a writer. And he said in a tweet today, there are tanks in the nation's capital and concentration camps at its border. The drift, the drift toward unimaginable is unmistakable. The drift toward the unimaginable is unmistakable. So Charles Blow, whose job is at the New York Times, says that between the concentration camps, he calls them, and the parade, we're clearly sinking into a Hitler-like situation. Now, when you hear that, do you have the same reaction I do, which is, you can't really tell if he's serious? I mean, I know that he means it to be taken seriously, but do you think that if you had a private conversation with him and he knew that you weren't going to talk about the conversation and you were in, just a private setting, and he said, Charles, I saw your tweet. It's pretty funny, but you don't actually think that what you're seeing is the lead up to a dictator taking over the country? You don't think that's actually happening, do you? And what would he say? And here's the fun part. I actually don't know. I don't know if he believes this is true. Do you? Do any of you? Can you tell? I really can't tell. So that's amazing. Here's another amazing thing. The same year that Pete Buttigieg is running for president, and President Trump said in a tweet that Alfred E. Newman will not be president, Mad Magazine just announced that they're going to discontinue publishing new content. So it turns out that Alfred E. Newman will be looking for a new job. Maybe president. Maybe. All right. I tweeted out an article by Newt Gingrich in which he is predicting that Kamala Harris will be the nominee for the Democrats. And he says that he's been predicting it since January. And I wondered, when was the first time I predicted it? So I went to my predicted account to see when I bought stock, because I actually bet on Kamala. I didn't bet on anybody else, right? So I've only placed one bet, and I wanted to see when it was. It was 8 months ago. So it was November. But I'm going to tell you something that I'm not supposed to tell you. You might believe me, you might not believe me, but I'm going to tell you because it's fun. Last August, you probably heard, most of you did, I was invited to the White House and got to chat with the president. Now, of course, one does not repeat what happens in a conversation with the president, but I will tell you one thing that I said, because I think that's fair. I predicted in the Oval Office just about a year ago, 11 months ago, that the nominee would be Kamala Harris. Now, we don't know if she will be, but I would say at this point, it's sort of obvious that it's shaping up that way. There was a period not too long ago when I lost confidence in that prediction because she was just disappearing on the campaign trail. Her tweets were beyond boring, and I was starting to think, is she actually just not a good candidate? But then she came alive during the debates, and the entire narrative has changed, and now it looks like Biden is just slipping and Bernie's slipping, and it's really going to be between Warren and Harris. And of the two of them, Harris is, I would say, a head above. So if it comes down to Warren and Harris, I think the safe bet is with Harris, although there are no guarantees in this world. All right, so I'm going to go on record as being the earliest predictor of Harris, and I was predicting it publicly before then. I think a year ago was the first time I said it. I saw a tweet by Tim Pool, who said that even the progressive YouTube accounts are losing followers like crazy. Apparently, and I didn't know this, I just found this out, that YouTube moved against all of the news and political stuff. So it didn't matter if you were left or right, which would explain why David Pakman, who would be more associated with the left, it would explain why he lost a bunch of viewers as well. Yes, you're right. We have not enjoyed the simultaneous sip yet. Let us pause now. Grab your cup, your mug, your glass. Grab your stein, your chalice, your tankard, your thermos, your flask, vessel of any kind. Fill it with coffee. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And now for the dopamine hit of the day. Thank you for reminding me. The day would not have been the same without it. So anyway, given that YouTube has decided to suppress, if that's the right word, or throttle back news and political content from both the left and the right, I don't know if that's the best decision in the world, but it's their decision. And when I found that out, I signed up for BitChute. So BitChute is the competitor to YouTube. And they have a new tool, and I was just looking into it. And apparently, Ali Alexander was behind at least he was, I don't know how deeply involved he was, but he was part of making this happen. I'm not sure who actually did the code. Could have been part of Ali's design or not. But anyway, he was central to getting a tool that would automatically move your videos from YouTube over to BitChute. So just before I signed on, I created an account, and I'm doing a test of moving one video over. Now, I'll probably just be mirroring the content for a while. So, but given that YouTube has if I had to put the odds on it, I'd say 30% chance of just kicking me off the service entirely. Wouldn't you say? 30% chance I would just get kicked off entirely. Now, I don't think it would happen unless I start making a difference in the election. If that happens, I'm pretty sure I'll get kicked off. But I've got a backup now, so I'll let you know about that. Let's talk about Portland. So, as you know, reality is subjective, and we're living in a big old simulation. I don't know who's the author of the simulation. I think it might be me, because things certainly seem to go my way quite often. But it turns out that the chief of police in Portland, where Antifa attacked Andy Ngo, and there was that latest dust up, the name of the chief of police, I'm not making this up. Her last name is Outlaw. The chief of police in a town that was having trouble controlling the crime, her actual last name is Outlaw, spelled exactly like outlaw. I'm not making that up. I swear. That's true. Here's the second part that's interesting. Outlaw has suggested that Portland ban masks in public demonstrations. Now, who was saying that besides me? I'm trying to see. I'm pretty sure Greg Gutfeld said it on the 5. But besides us, who else said the Portland needs to change the laws to make masks illegal? Did we make a difference? I don't know, but I ask you, that's an actual question. Did you see anybody else calling for that? Because I was saying, and still say, that just because Portland has crime and some violence would not keep me from going there, because every city has some crime and some violence. But my red line was that they have a law that allows you to wear a mask in public to do your violence. And under those conditions, I will never go to Portland. So let me say it again. I will never go to Portland again, as long as that law stands, that you can wear a mask in public and beat up Trump supporters with impunity. Did Tucker say it? Somebody's saying that Tucker Carlson said it, which would certainly have amplified the message 1,000 times from when I said it. But, and then a spokesperson who's opposed to the unmasking, somebody from the American Civil Liberties Union of Oregon, said that it doubts a policy prohibiting masks could be enforced in a constitutional manner. And a spokesperson says, quote, "A policy that prohibits wearing a mask to a protest will have police focusing on the wrong issue." Will it? Because I think wearing a mask to a protest so that you can beat people with clubs with impunity is sort of the only important issue that's happening. What was the other issue that they would be ignoring while they were preventing masked terrorists from beating people with deadly weapons? Is it the littering? What exactly are the other issues that they would be distracted from? Then she goes, behavior is the issue, not the mask. To which I say, the mask is the behavior. You put the mask on to do the behavior. The mask is a big part of the behavior. This is the most ridiculous, weakest argument I've ever seen. And then she says, the spokesperson goes on to say, there are many legitimate reasons people wear masks, including political and religious reasons. Okay, I'm not convinced. And I'm going to say something now that'll probably get me kicked off of most social media. And I'm going to be careful about this, but I'm going to give you my honest opinion about it. You need to know some background first. When I watched the videos of Andy No being hit on the head, and then of course the news shows other clips, and you can see them on the internet, of other people being hit on the head. And it's obvious that part of Antifa's strategy, at least the people coming to cause trouble, they're coming specifically to hit people on the head with blunt objects. It's obvious that that's the strategy. They're not going for the body, they're going for the head, and they're bringing specifically the kind of tools that would make a lot of damage on the head. Let me give you some background on my feeling about this. Many of you know my stepson died in the past year from an opioid overdose, including fentanyl. So you've heard that story. So you've watched the pain I went through, kind of trying to deal with the fact that I'd worked so hard to keep him on the right path, but couldn't do it. And he died this year of an overdose. What you don't know is that it's the second time he died. The first time he died was after a bicycle accident in which he had a head injury. Now, he was wearing a helmet, and it was just a freak injury. No, it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just a sort of an ordinary childhood injury. But he landed in a freakishly weird way where the helmet didn't help as much as it should. He was rushed to the emergency room with a helicopter. Yeah, I think he was 14. He was rushed to the emergency room in a helicopter, unconscious, where he stayed unconscious for a while. When he came back, his brain was bleeding. And of course, when I saw the Andy No stories, I was reminded of that. For the next month or so, after he had been released, he had to be kept in a dark, quiet room. So the windows would be darkened, and he couldn't have any noise, and he couldn't have the TV on or anything else. He simply had to stay there, coming in and out of consciousness for about a month. That was the prescription medically, because when you've got such a bad head injury, you don't want any inputs. So for about a month, and the problem was that when he was awake, he couldn't make good decisions, and he couldn't stand up straight. So if he tried to walk, he would fall and he would injure his head again. That was the danger. But you couldn't strap him down. I mean, you couldn't tie him up. And you couldn't reason with him not to try to stand up and use the bathroom or walk around, because his brain wasn't working. So we had to have round the clock for a month, an adult laying on the bed next to him and awake, so that you could grab him if he tried to get up. You had to physically restrain him. So for a month, I took turns with my ex and his biological father, who moved into my house, at least for the time that he was caring for the kid. I mean, we took breaks, of course, but we took 8-hour shifts or whatever it was, and we would just stay there in silence next to him on the bed for a month in the dark. When he recovered, if you can call it that, to the point where he could function and go back to school and stuff, he was no longer the same person. His personality was radically different. And the way that it was different specifically, I think it was different in a few ways, but the way it was different specifically is that he could no longer recognize risks for what they were. He went from being a very cautious kid who really didn't like to skateboard in any dangerous way. He didn't like to do anything that was dangerous. He was the most cautious kid you've ever seen. But after the head injury, he no longer had any fear for any physical danger, including drugs. And his friends came to us, in the following years and would say to me, you have to do something because we'll be at a party and he'll be, totally zonked out and somebody will hand him drugs and we know there's way too much and he shouldn't do it, but he will take everything that's handed to him. He will not distinguish. If it's handed to him, and it always is, he'll take it. Doesn't matter what it's mixed with, doesn't matter how much, doesn't matter. And it was part of his complete lack of fear. He did other things that were dangerous as well. So I watched him die twice. Once from a head injury. The child he used to be didn't exist after that. He became a different creature, and it was a creature that couldn't survive in our world because he didn't have a normal sense of risk avoidance. So when I watch Andy Ngo get hit on the head by people who came there to hit people on the head, and then I watch the video clips of other people being hit in the head who were being hit by Antifa, and I say to myself, do we treat that like normal assault? Is that the same as if you break somebody's arm? Is the penalty the same for hitting somebody in the head and changing who they are for the rest of their biological life? Is that the same as breaking somebody's arm? I don't think it should be. Based on my experience, somebody says it should be treated as attempted murder, and I disagree. I disagree. If somebody comes with the intention of creating head injuries and then does it and creates a head injury, I would treat that as the death penalty. I'm in favor of the death penalty for Antifa, the people who came and actually hit people on the head. Let me say it again, because I don't want to have any ambiguity about this. The current law probably treats it as some kind of assault, blah, blah, blah. I don't care what you call it. If you come somewhere to injure somebody's head and then you do it, that should be the death penalty. Now, here's the part that's going to get me kicked off of all social media. Are you ready for this? This might be the last time you ever see me. And I'm not kidding. If you put me on a jury trial for somebody who shoots somebody for hitting somebody over the head at an Antifa rally, let's just say hypothetically, and by the way, I'm very much not encouraging this behavior. Do not do anything violent. And I'd like to compliment everybody, really everybody who owns a gun. I'd like to compliment everybody who owns a gun that nobody in Antifa has ever been shot. Think about that. Think about who they're going up against and how many guns that group and their supporters collectively own. 0 people have been shot. How many people have Antifa attacked in their head? Their head. Quite a few. How many have been shot? 0. I would hope that we'll go through the rest of time and nobody will ever be shot. Don't shoot anybody. Do not shoot anybody. That said, if somebody did, and you put me on a jury trial, I would not convict them. I would not convict anybody who took out an Antifa person for hitting somebody else in the head intentionally. Wouldn't do it. Now, good luck getting 12 people who are random citizens to convict, because you wouldn't get me to do it. So this is probably the last time you'll ever see me on social media. We'll see how that goes. But since YouTube is demonetizing me anyway, they're demonetizing these pretty much automatically now. Let me just say that we're treating this all wrong. We're treating it all wrong. Because if we're treating somebody who comes with a blunt object, a pipe or a sock full of coins or whatever they're using, and they're going for the head, that's the same as murder. Because those people probably will never be the same. I don't know if you saw Andy Ngo being interviewed not too long after the attack on Tucker Carlson. I didn't ever see him before that, but he didn't look like he was in good shape. And I would ask you, what are the odds that Andy Ngo will have no permanent damage from that? I don't know. The odds of permanent damage, pretty high. Look at all the football players, as somebody said. If you look at the football players, there's a pretty big percentage of them who have permanent problems because of all the concussions. So I think we need to account for the fact that we're smarter and that there's more understanding of what a head injury means. If you have a cartoon idea of what a head injury is, you've watched movies where people get hit on the head and they're unconscious for a while and then they pop up and they save the world. That's not what that's all about. Head injuries kills the person in the inside of that skull. Not every time, but enough that you could treat it as murder if it did. So I'm gonna throw down my stake there. I think that the Antifa people, if they wear a mask especially, and they show up with a blunt object and they hit somebody in the head, it should be the death penalty. And if there happened to be somebody there, and I do not recommend this, I hope you do not do this, but if it happened, I would never convict. So that's my story. I didn't mean to be a downer today, but one of the reasons that I like to think of the Antifa people as being attracted to the violence more than the politics, which the insiders will admit they're in it for the adrenaline buzz. Now you have to ask yourself, what allowed that to happen? What allowed this situation to exist? And I would say, to a great extent, it's the illegitimate media, the fake news, because they've told a story where somebody like Charles Blow can say, and I read this earlier, this is his tweet today. This is somebody who's, you could consider a thought leader. This is somebody who should be, helping people to think better about their situation. And Charles Blow says, let this sink in. I'll read it again. There are tanks in the nation's capital and concentration camps at its borders. The drift toward the unimaginable is unmistakable. Now, if you were a young, not too bright person, and you saw serious adults tell you that President Trump and his supporters are moving the country toward a Hitler-like situation, what would be the most responsible, patriotic thing for you to do? It would be to resist it, and even violently. So Charles Blow, you've got some blood on your hands. Charles Blow, you have blood on your hands. You're the kind of person who's, and again, I can't tell how much you actually believe what you're saying and how much you're saying it for effect. Just can't tell. But either way, you're creating a situation where people are hitting people on the heads in public, wearing masks while they do it, and thinking they're on the side of the right, meaning on the side of good, not political right. They actually think they're on the side of justice. And Charles Blow, you caused that. You should take some responsibility for the for the death that's coming out of that and the injuries. You should really take some responsibility for that, as well as the rest of the media. So, yes, let's keep it a little bit lighter. I started the hashtag that I thought would drive the Trump haters crazy, because they were worried that he's going to have tanks. President Trump will have tanks at his celebration, and so I created the hashtag Tanks President Trump, which just sounds funny. All right, that's all I have to say for now. Didn't mean to be a downer, but I do think we probably have to deal with this Antifa stuff, and at the very least, get rid of the masks. Don't hurt anybody, don't be violent, and I'm proud of all of you who have, let's say, kept your Second Amendment rights and not abused them, because you certainly had every reason to do so. But thank you for not doing that. It's a great credit to you for control. It's a great credit to your, I don't know, constitutional integrity, let's call it. So that's my compliment to you. And I will talk to you all later.